Greetings. Welcome to Paint Here Now. I am Will Parody, and this is Art4Truth. We are Art4Truth. Today we are going to have some fun painting, and we're going to be looking at the idea of aerial perspective or atmospheric perspective and how that relates to anything, what it is, what it means, and how that relates to painting and the color exercises we've been doing. This is, in essence, a continuation of our series we've been doing. This is the fourth of our color mixing exercises. So we've mixed complementary colors together to get grays and browns. We've looked at warm and cool colors. We've looked at how the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, can form all the other colors more or less. And now we're going to look a little bit of how to use them. What aerial perspective is, or atmospheric perspective, is essentially, it is the reason that, or it is making objects in the distance look like they're in the distance by having their colors more muted, subdued, and gray, even blue-gray, and colors in the front being bolder in order to create the sense of depth in a painting, to make things look like the colors fading in the distance. The reason that real-life objects, mountains, trees, everything fades in the distance, gets a little bit duller, darks tend to get lighter, and lights tend to get a little bit darker, which is good to know for painting, is because there's so many microparticles, dust, and all kinds of things, perhaps millions of living things in the air, or millions, trillions upon trillions of things in the air. And those particles create a field. They create essentially a filter from us and things in the distance, which causes the colors to fade and get a little bit more gray. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. And so we're going to be looking at that kind of perspective quite a bit today, and how we can use these colors that we've mixed in the past in order to bring out nice pictures and basically whatever we want. They can be landscapes, they can be abstractions. The sky is the limit. And also the sky itself does get duller as it goes into the distance. So without further ado, I will show you the materials we're going to use. I like to use an old ice cube tray. You can use a lid from a yogurt container or something else. I like to use something that's a reusable thing. You don't have to go out and buy a palette. We have red, yellow, blue, a couple different blues, green, light green, dark green, orange, and purple, and white. Those are the main colors that we will be using, and orange we'll be mixing them together. And showing what we can do. I'm using just any old brush. This brush has seen better days, but we'll show you how you can use even a raggedy old brush like this and make some neat things happen. And we'll continue with our exercise. So thank you all for joining us and being here with this, and let's get to painting. All right, so we are going to start with what we have been doing. I'm going to show you a little bit of a recap of some of the things we've been doing before we get on to the actual lesson. Just a real quick recap. So we have red, orange, yellow. When you mix red and yellow, you get orange. And you see these three colors look almost like fire. Those are warm colors. There's a sense of warmth, and actually does affect the body, the mind, and we'll see that. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, blue and yellow make green, yellow and blue make green. That's always a fun one. And then we have red and blue make purple. So there we go. Basic color wheel here. Primary colors, red, blue, yellow. Mixed together, come up with orange, green, and purple. These three colors are cool colors, as you can see, as opposed to these being warm, where they're lighter, more aquatic, more calm in a way, and these are more fiery, more uplifting, and they do affect the body. So that's your basic color wheel, and then you can mix all of these colors in different capacities to get all kinds of cool results. So if you take red and green, purple and yellow, and blue and orange respectively, you have the complementary colors. So those are the three sets: red and green, purple and yellow. Oh boy, look at that. And then orange and blue. And they basically just come together to almost neutralize each other. If you mix green and red together, for example, you get grays, grays and browns, depending on your mix and the different colors you add. Same thing with purple and yellow and orange and blue. So we'll show you that real quick because it's very, very useful. Very useful. A lot of what we're going to be doing today is dependent on the idea of mixing these complementary colors to get different types of grays. So we have some green there, some red. Mix that up. We're going to just a little bit more green. Yeah, see, that's interesting. That's a reddish, maroonish color. Real dark, earthy, warm kind of a brown. We add some green. Changes it up. Now we have almost a cool green, dark green, faded color. And see, these colors will recede into the distance over the bolder colors. See, even in these darks, you can see that example there. Real neat stuff. So, gonna add a little bit more red, just a little bit here. When we add a little bit of white to this, look at the gray. Whew, isn't that cool? To varying degrees, depending on how much white we add. Add it to the green. Now we have a cooler gray, right? You got gray, it's greenish gray, but it's a cooler gray. And then if we take some of this and add a little bit of extra red, it's a warmer gray. And you can see the difference. Same thing if we add a little bit of blue. We'll do more. And orange. Oh yeah, this is a real good solid orange, so I'm going to add definitely more blue. But look at that, those brownish colors that we get. Candy-like almost. Really just look at that interesting brownish color. We're going to add a little bit more blue. And look how that gets to be more of a gray, even more blue. More blue! More blue. Ba-ba-ba-ba-boo. Blue. Cool color. Look at that. Add a little white to it. It's almost a purple kind of a color. Nice gray. Going with that blue. Want to bring that steel out in it. So you can see you have some really neat colors here. We have cloud color, even water, all kinds of neat stuff. Faded gray colors. We're going to add a little bit more orange to our mix. Bring out something a little bit more brown. This is a little bit cooler. This is a little bit warmer. And again, you can see the difference, the temperature difference. I'm going to add a little bit of the lighter blue here just for fun. See the different things we can get. Another cool gray, or a neat gray, if not exactly cool in temperature. Okay, there we go. And then before we get too carried away here, we're going to mix that purple and yellow. And again, look at the variants we get here of these different interesting browns, an earthy brown, almost a greenish brown even. Lighter here, See, purple also, it can be a little warm and can be a little cool, and yellow too. They're sort of on the cusp. You can see here between the red and the blue and the green and the orange, they're both kind of on the cusp. But they'll tend to be a little bit warmer, respectively, yellow and purple. But we're going to add some more purple here. Kind of a lot more purple, and really change things up a little, see what happens, see how cool that is. Look at that. That's a neat brown. Add a little bit of white. Very useful colors here. Very useful colors. Neat stuff. So there you go. Look, just from these three colors, basically, and mixing some white in the complements, we have some warms, we have some cools, we have a lot of grays and browns. So look at all that we can do with these colors. So let's look at what we can do with these colors and start a bit of a painting. I'm going to go with the idea of a little bit of a landscape here. The reason that I'm going to do that is because it's a really good way, real solid and safe way to show ideas of atmospheric perspective or aerial perspective. And I'm also going to do some abstract forms because I think that it's also a useful thing to know in abstraction, because sometimes you want a sense of space created by bolder colors on top of more faded colors. And so some of those same kinds of principles can apply. And you'll see what we can do. So we're going to start off here. I'm just going to put a little bit of water from this brush in an area. Just like this, because I'm just going to add I'm going to make a little bit of a sky right in this area, okay? And so what I'm going to do for my sky, I'm going to start with this kind of this color I like. In fact, I'm going to add just a little bit of white to it as I mix it in. And I'm basically going to blend this in. And we're not going for perfect, smooth, tight. Oh, I know. Now, these are acrylic paints, if I haven't said that already. So they're water-based. They have slightly different qualities than oils. They dry quicker. You don't have the same oils and smells and turpentines and all that kinds of stuff to deal with. They're not always as bold, and sometimes the drying quicker is not advantageous to some painter styles. They like to go back the next day while things are still wet and work on it. Here you layer. It's one of the things we want to do. So let me show you something that we've done already. And you can see, just by the nature of the water and a little bit of orangey stuff that was on my brush. In fact, I want to emphasize that just a little bit here. Gets a little bit of orange. So what I did and am doing is I'm showing you that the sky itself is subject to those rules of aerial perspective. So even like the sky, when you look way down in the horizon line, isn't necessarily going to be the same bold, bright blue color. Oftentimes it's whiter or more faded. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add just this touch of orange, and I don't want to make it look too much like a sunset here. So I'm going to just put a bunch in for emphasis to show you. Then I'm going to blend it in a little with some water, wipe the excess off, blend it in again. And then I'm going to add a little bit more of my blue in here. A little bit more of this water. And just to show another way in which that we can recede the sky, we add a little bit of its complement, just a little bit, to make a little bit more of a gray color over our original blue. We're going to add just a touch of white here, doing a lot of water dripping and stuff. That's okay. For this bottom part, because it's going to be a little bit more faded. It's not clouds per se, it's just bringing out some dullness. We'll throw some clouds in and show how that works too, and then we'll bring back some more bolder blue. And again, I'm doing a lot of this real quick, and just to emphasize the point of what the colors can do. And showing you without the perfect brush, without the perfect paints or materials, because that's a big part of painting, is finding ways to make something work and to learn and understand and enjoy and have fun and all the things of painting without necessarily having all the best stuff. Be able to do what you can with what you have. So you can already see here how it feels like there's more of a distance happening in this. coming out. And then got a little bit of extra space in here. I could add some more blue, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some cloud coverage. Adding just a few little whirly twirly shapes and a little like back and forth lines for the bottoms of them, just to get the idea of some clouds coming in here. That kind of thing. Maybe it's a little bit bolder here. And then we've got something coming here that's more in the distance. It's not necessarily smaller than this cloud in real life, if there is such a thing, but it is going to look like it in the painting. So already I want this to be faded in a little bit more and looking more in the back than this cloud. Already it is. So now we're going to add a little bit of shadow to this. One way that I'm going to make a shadow is I'm going to take some of that blue, and I'm going to add a touch of orange and a little bit of red. It's going to be purplish, a little bit more blue. That red is pretty strong stuff. And we don't want it to be super, super duper red. And then from there, just a little bit of orange. It's also pretty strong. So we got a nice kind of a gray, more of a gray color that's still pretty close to our clouds. We're going to add just a little bit more orange, or to the sky, a little bit more orange. And then from there, just a touch of water to loosen that up a little bit. We'll just add this kind of a gray color just a little bit under here to some areas where we want a little bit of shadow, and we'll come back in and blend it with a little white. That's what I like to do usually. I don't ever believe that, your colors should be the last colors that, when you lay down a color like this, that nothing will cover it and that's the color you're going to see when the painting is done. I'm a layerer. I do think that it adds a whole nother layer of, no pun intended, but a whole other level, I think, of life and purpose to a painting, to be able to layer on top, to use the painting strokes that you've put on and the marks you've made as a foundation to grow and build until you're finally satisfied with a piece. Sometimes your strokes, the first strokes you do, are buried under inches of paint. They are for what I do. But that's okay, because they're all still there. They're all still helping to form the essential mood of this piece. So, okay, I don't want to get too carried away. The idea is just to make a few little highlights and marks. Going to bring out a little bit more white, a little solid white to this area in here, because I want that to sort of be coming out even further than this one. Just a little bit here, a little bit more highlight. Just carefully a little bit more highlight here, because it is a big, hefty set of clouds, right? It's not just a wisp, but it looks like it's a little farther away. So now we've got sort of an idea of how the aerial perspective works here. Notice how I used in the shading a little bit more orange, a little bit of, little red to gray things up, and how we start to have a bit of a recession. Sometimes colors in here that are midtones will be the highlights over here in the distance. So there's just a basic example, basic idea of what you might be able to do to show how you can set space in the distance. Even though this one, looks like it might, it's receding, but it's in front of this one as far as how we might perceive it. This one will come out more towards us as it would in the sky if this one was truly more backwards. A little bit more kind of dark here real quick. And we don't want to beleaguer the point, just to bring out a little bit more of this, and then blend it just a slight amount with the white. All right, that makes me a little bit more satisfied with this coming out over this. So, excellent. See how we can have this sense of depth from using these colors. So, let me show you a pretty basic example here. We'll even add it into here. It's going to be a little different, but we'll have some distant hills, mountains, if you will. So I'm starting with this blue, right? Wow, look at that. It's so neat looking here. I'm going to change it some, because they're not that far away per se. Now, a lot of times when you look at mountains, for example, in the distance, they do look a little bit more blue, because that's kind of what happens with the aerial perspective. So you'll end up using a fair amount of blue for distant things like distant mountains and whatnot. So I'm going to mix a little bit of green. I'm doing here a little light and darker green, more light. And I'm going to take that green and I'm going to mix just a touch of red into it. Back a little bit more because this is distant. So I'm getting this really subduing, darkening even the green. What I'm going to do now is, while this is still fresh, I'm going to add a little bit to the blue, take off my excess because I want to keep some of that blue, and just start sort of blending it in. And now you have something that looks more like hilly mountains than just rock mountains or whatever. Might be a little bit closer even. Hilly rock, I mean tree covered. Hills can be not covered with trees. Learned that in St. Paul, Alaska. Beautiful, beautiful island, not a single tree. Not a very big island. But it was not a tiny one. But no trees, lots of hills, lots of beauty. So here we have some distant hills coming in here. Even some little tree coverage coming up. This looks like it could be getting to dusk or something here time-wise. We're going to add just a touch, little bit of light green to our mix that we just made here with the blue, and blend it in and just add just a little bit here of some highlights. But again, we're not just going straight to the bright green and adding it. We're mixing it, subduing it. It's the strongest, it's the lightest thing on there, but we're not jumping straight to the real light stuff yet. And now we're going to make like another little layer of hills per se. Yeah, one more little sort of layers of not quite so big, tall hills. And then so what we'll do is I'm going to add a little bit more of that green again to our mix. Just a touch of red too, because we're still a little bit of ways away and we don't have the blue to work with as we did before. So now we're going to add, just as a foundation, something like this. Maybe just a little bit more. And it is something like this. And then I'm going to add a touch of yellow. As opposed to that real bright green, I'm going to do a little bit of yellow because it's not going to be quite as bold, but it will help lighten things up. Whoops, let's see here. And again, I'm mixing the yellow in a little bit first with some of my other colors so that it's not just a bold yellow on top of this. We'll get to that. So then we have this other layer of kind of much closer sort of hills. Might not even be as many trees, a few, with some bushes and stuff. We'll just use our brush and a little bit of highlight to bring out some different areas that might exist. But not too sudden, but subtly, right? Where it's still sort of in the distance, so we're not using a whole heck of a lot, per se, of texture or highlight, a little bit more in here. Just, again, we're trying to illustrate the point of how to use these colors and bring them out. So now we're going to put, I don't know, another little level, maybe some individual trees and shrubs. I'm using this bolder color right away right now, but I'm still blending it in. I didn't clean my brush well, so it's mixing in with some of our other color. So it's not completely, whoa, but as we're doing some more individual elements here, a little more shrubs, maybe something a little bit taller to indicate. So again, we're seeing how we can use this idea of perspective to bring things up while using bolder colors. Now, I am going to add some highlights, mixing this green with this yellow, like this. And it helps to lighten it and subdue it some. Because we got a little bit of mix from our other colors and our less bold colors in here. And I'm just sort of adding a few little bit of mid kind of tones, not exactly highlights. I'm going to take a little bit of darker color now and add to our mix. And let's just add a little bit of kind of shadows in here that they might indicate some trees and bushes with my, just kind of jabbing it at it with my brush. Not covering everything up. So in this case, this is our kind of one of our more upfront areas. And now what if we have a bush coming up right here? We want it to be bolder than everything else and pop. So we're going to do that a little bit with its detailing and some of its color and its contrast. We don't need so much of the complements right now because we will when we get to some shading. But again, I'm going to add some bold yellow just right to this because I like sometimes yellow in my landscapes to be used as a bold kind of a highlight color and not just green, lighter greens and whites and just anyways. So we're indicating a bit of a difference, mixing it in some so it's not total perfect yellow. Seeing a bit of a difference from these other colors. I'm going to take some nice dark green, mix it a little bit with what I got, and start adding, maybe it's a bush with a bunch of little hidden places for light and shadow and all its little leaves or whatever, but we'll just bring out some more shadows in here. And again, I'm doing this more than anything else to just indicate another level. I'm not getting too detailed or too crazy about where my lights and darks are coming from. I'm gonna, so it comes up a little. But I want to make sure that there's a nice, some type of distinction in the edge, at least a little bit, from one layer to the next. And anyways, so we get the idea. Maybe there's a little bit of a duller shadow that comes up behind here. And now we're going to take a little of a brown color. We're almost doing a little landscapey piece here. Take some orange and some red and some dark green. Mixing it together, could have color something like this. Add a little bit more red. Definitely a little white. Some orange. A little bit more white in here. And so we have this kind of a nice sandy color. I'm going to add just a little bit of blue. Again, to bring it back a little bit. No, don't need that much, but that'll work perfect. And then we're going to do something like this. Just kind of make a sort of a shoreline or something here real quick. And then I'm going to take some of these bolder that I didn't mix all with white and blue, a little bit bold, in fact, a little bit more of that red. Yeah. And I'm going to do something similar here. Extend it out, but again, it's not as subdued as the other one. It's following, doing what it's got to do to show what we call, like I've been talking about, aerial perspective. A little bit more green in here, just, again, a little sloppy, that's all right. Sometimes painting should be very, very sloppy. You can learn so much and gain such a good sense of composition by allowing just paint and splatter and spread and just see what happens. And you can always layer and add and fine-tune your composition to get these bold, beautiful pieces. Anyways, I'm going to add just a little bit more highlight here because I like to do that and then bring it down just a little. So anyways, we have this more of a distinction here. So now let's do a little bit of water, okay? And then we'll show you a little bit. So on my brush, as you can see, I still have some green and some of these muds that I've been using over here. And so in my distance where my water is farthest away, I'm going to use some of those colors. Take a little water to this because we are painting water. After all, help to spread this out some. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some blue and come down here, a little bit bolder, one of my river colors. At this point, I think we're looking at a little river or something. Reminds me of the river near where I live. Still mixing and blending some of these duller colors, but allowing some blue. Now, as I'm adding a little bit more of this blue, I'm allowing a little bit of space in between. I don't want to fill everything up. So again, we have more subdued. We used colors to dull things back, some of the colors we've been using, so they all kind of connect, they're all linked. Now I'm going to add a little bit of this other blue here. Just some of my left out areas and a little bit up here, because there's some more action going on. Then complete flatness there. It's just a little bit farther away, so keeping it a little bit more subdued. And then I'm going to take some white and just add some white in some of these areas. Blend it in a little bit. And again, some of the bolder colors, more up front. I'm doing this to emphasize where there's distinctions more than anything, more than to make a real nice landscape. I just want to show how things get duller in the back and bolder in the front. So there you go. More or less, you have an idea. You can see a sense of depth. We've started the landscape. We've mixed complements to get these different grays and browns, and we've used them to help recede things into the distance. Even our sky, our clouds, mountains, trees, things are coming up further, even our water. Little mucky in here, but that's quite all right. Like I said, we're trying to show just the example, and every attempt at mixing color, at discovering and trying new things is always valid. And that's not a terrible little attempt at a quick landscape there. Now let me show you something else real quick, because not everybody wants to paint landscapes, right? So then we have a color like this. We're going to make it just a little bit more green. Just a touch more green. So I put a little bit of green on my brush, wipe most of it off. I just want this to be a real green, kind of a green gray, okay? So imagine this is a color. Now we're completely separate from this at this point. We'll be dramatic. So this isn't, it could be a tree, it could be, we've already showed you how to bring things back a little bit there with the greens. Imagine this is a block of color. Imagine this is an abstract piece. And so I'm going to do the next level. I'm going to add a little bit of green and white. And a touch of red. Just a little bit more green. And then we have kind of a next step up from here. Again, it could be totally abstract piece. And then we'll add a little bit more green to what we just mixed there. And there's some red in there too. But now we're just adding, again, some pure green for the next one. And again, you can see the layers. You can use this abstractly, going from a grayer green mixed with its complement to something a little bit bolder. Now there's still its complement. There's still some red in there and a little white. And now we're going to clean the brush a little, wipe it off, and I'm going to take some of that pure green. And there we go. Now you can see that difference too. And you can use this abstractly. Really neat stuff. You can add a little bit more red. Or add a fair amount of red, but keep it a duller red. Put over here, for example. You have another layer of space here. Let's try something. Let's have some fun. In fact, we're going to come out like this even. And then add a little bit of red to that. So we're going the other way now with our complement, mixing greens to red. So add a little bit more red. And we'll kind of come up on top of this. And then more red. Actually, even more red. That's more like it. And then we're going to go for pretty much pure red here. There we go. Don't need that much. Brush like that, and then neat. You can see the differences of the gradients one way or the other, and this plays with the eye some. It's coming in and out. So it's neat, all the different possibilities that you can do here with colors, mixing the complements, using the idea of the aerial perspective so things are going in the distance, even with abstraction. So yeah, well, there we have it for now. All right, so we showed you a little bit about what happens today when we mix grays and complements to bold colors like red and green and a little bit of blue to make things recede into the distance and to create a sense of what we call atmospheric perspective, which is the way colors get duller and more, as they go into the distance and not quite as bright. So the bolder colors indicate things up front, and the more dull colors tend to indicate things in the back. We've talked more in practical applications of this. Next week, we're going to do a 3-part series, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. When we've been airing these, I'm going to try to continue to do that. And we're going to start a landscape piece. And I think it's going to be sort of a fun, surreal landscape piece. It's not going to be more naturalistic like this, but we're going to do a 3-part piece there, and it will be whatever you want. I'm going to show you what I do, and then you go from there, because I want your paintings to be very unique and individual. So we looked at some color mixing possibilities and stuff this week in this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. We look forward to seeing you again on Monday. Come paint with us. Whatever you're doing, I hope you're finding love and solace in hard times, and keep making art. Thank you all for your ears, eye, and time.